So this week we're going to dive into the recent uptick that we've seen in Hedera network transaction volume. We're also going to get into the crypto market, which has been experiencing a downtrend, and HBAR has underperformed a bit, but there actually is a little bit of a silver lining there that we'll get into here in a little while. We also have one of the founders of Karate Combat on to talk about some of the recent success of the events that they've had alongside some of the major crypto events we have going on, and he's also going to talk about his app and only gaming, the token, and so forth. We also have one of the really talented developers in the space that has created a completely new kind of game on Hedera. Of course, we're going to get Shark Bites on as well, and we have much, much more. So welcome back. I'm Brandon, the HBAR Bull. I do some contract work for the HBAR Foundation, but I don't do these weekly updates in any official capacity. I'm just coming to you personally to give you the latest in the Hedera ecosystem. But as always, none of this is financial advice. Use it for entertainment or educational purposes only. So as I mentioned, we've seen a pretty good uptick in the amount of transactions that are being processed for Hedera. And of course, most of those transactions are coming from one of our marquee use cases. It's from one of our council members, Avery Dennison, and it's called Atma.io. And they pump out tons of transactions. And what we're seeing right now is we're cruising along at about 2,200 transactions per second. And midweek for about a day, we jumped up and we were averaging about 3,000 transactions per second. Year to date, we have been seeing just a general uptrend in the amount of transactions the network's processing. And Atma.io is pretty much still a proof of concept. Of course, it is in production, but they are making tweaks all the time. So that's why we see these spikes down every once in a while they reset some things. But we had an uptrend last year as well, and that kind of reset down, and now we're kind of continuing another uptrend this year. So we don't know if this is going to sustain or not, but right now we are on that pretty nice uptrend. Now, Avery Dennison poured a fair amount of developer resources into developing Atma.io, and they continue to maintain it, of course, and they're making those upgrades that I mentioned to make sure they're meeting their business needs. The transactions themselves are subsidized by the HBAR Foundation, so we aren't gaining anything, but we aren't losing anything either, because, of course, those fees end up back in the treasury to be distributed again. But the main thing about this is it proves our scale. I mean, we've had times when we've processed over 11,000 transactions per second, so that throttle is a soft throttle. It actually can move through that number. And on a consistent basis, we're processing 3 times as many transactions as the next on this list, as you can see here on ChainSpect. Now, I love the work that ChainSpect does, but there are a couple things on here that I think I'm going to contact them about to try to get them corrected. First, it shows the block time at 2 seconds, but the finality at 7. So, of course, Hedera doesn't have blocks, but we are coming to consensus finality in about 3.2 seconds right now. So at very least, I want to make sure that they are getting the correct time to finality. Right now, they have it at 7 seconds. So we want to get that down to 3.2 so it's accurate. Now, if you look down at Solana, their block time is 0.44 seconds. Now, Solana, because it's a blockchain, does not have true finality, but I do think it makes sense to have the proper number of confirmations to get that 12.8 seconds before it's good enough. Now, I know in some cases, some dexes allow just one confirmation, and they think that's good enough, but I think to be prudent on Solana, you really do need to wait for that 12.8 seconds. Now, I think the main thing with transaction volume on Hedera right now isn't necessarily revenue. It's just proving out that we can scale to the numbers that we actually say. As we mentioned, we have had up over 10,000 transactions per second, and I'm sure we can go much higher than that. And with sharding, we could have unlimited scaling. But I do think that true revenue is going to be very important, obviously, for the Hedera network. And the one thing that I'm really excited about for the Hedera ecosystem is the Guardian ecosystem. Now, the HBAR Foundation has supported the Guardian ecosystem in building out that infrastructure, but they've focused on actually building the infrastructure itself, the pieces and parts that need to go into that. When we get to the point where we're processing a lot of the carbon markets out there, and I think that is coming, I think that Hedera is going to add the necessary trust to process the vast majority of the carbon markets out there, and that's going to prove things out for the rest of the financial ecosystem to show how you can add efficiency and trust using these networks. But the nice thing is that even though we are supporting the building of that infrastructure, once these markets do move onto the Hedera network, those fees that are generated are going to be paid by the market participants. So I actually think that's one of the best ways that we could get to sustainability, but we'll see about that in the future. So the next thing we're going to talk about is in the stablecoin space. We're going to talk about the Hedera Stablecoin Studio and some new features that are coming to it. So Elliptic is bringing a toolkit that offers proof of reserve functionality that uses existing systems or on-chain oracles to bolster the ability to provide transparency and disclosure, while seamless custody provider integrations ease development and reduce time to market. I also have a quote from the Elliptic CTO. He says, as global attention turns to stablecoin regulation, it's more important than ever for issuers to consider the technologies underpinning their compliance stack. We're thrilled to be on the frontiers of finance's next generation of bringing additional layers of confidence and trust to everyone issuing tokens through Hedera Network's cutting-edge Stablecoin Studio platform. Now, I do think on the retail-facing side, the Hedera ecosystem has a lot of work to do when it comes to stablecoins, but in the background, banks have been doing a lot of work. We've heard a lot of information come from Rob Allen on this. They've been doing a lot of the groundwork that's necessary, and the Stablecoin Studio brings the tools that are necessary for these enterprises to bring stablecoins to a level and scale that we really haven't seen quite yet. So, of course, we should be really happy that we're seeing these kind of integrations. All right, so next up, we have Shark Bites. We got some great questions from the community. Of course, we skipped 1 week last week, but we came back with a vengeance this week and tried to address some of your questions. Rob, welcome back. I know we went on a little bit of a hiatus here, but we are back.
Hey, Brandon. Yeah, it's great to be back. It's quite chilly here in Sydney. Certainly not the 40 degrees I was experiencing in Italy, but yeah, it's great to be home. Let's get on with it.
What is the temperature down there? I know it's, wintertime, but, what's the temperature where you are?
Oh, it varies between about 14 and 24. Depends on the day and the weather patterns.
I gotcha. Well, it's...
And the thing about Sydney is that none of the houses are built with kind of insulation standards. So it's pretty cold. It's the only place in the world I've ever had an electric blanket.
I gotcha. All right, so we're going to jump right into these questions. We have several of them. The first one comes from DMNMNN, who says, hey, Rob and Brandon, Hedera is an LLC. When does Hedera expect to break even, and what's their strategy to do so? Thank you.
This is a very interesting question, isn't it? And I've got to assume that the questioner understands the difference between the various organizations in this kind of decentralized ecosystem that has formed over the last couple of years. But the LLC, as he says, so Hedera LLC is the governing council, it's the board, and it's the staff which support the council's activities, which are primarily the committees that we talk about, CoinCom and TechCom and CorpCom and Marcom and the rest. It's a relatively small admin staff supporting the operations of the governing council. And the council, it is an LLC, so it is incorporated. It's incorporated in Delaware. It has 39 equal shares, which we all know align to the 39 seats on the governing council, of which there are 31 filled. And the purpose of the governing council is to do five things, basically five things. It's to govern the nodes, to govern the network and the nodes specifically in this first stage of decentralization and beyond, to approve the code changes and technology around what that main net looks like and the ancillary technology around it. So that's the first thing, node governance. Second one is coin economics. So the governing council sits on, we've got our treasury committee, our coin committee, CoinCom, and we vote on those things which are pertinent to the overall token, HBAR token economy, API pricing, node rewards, staking rewards, that sort of thing. The third thing is treasury management. So we control the big chunks of distribution. So we vote for which of the ecosystem partners or others receive allocations from that treasury. We agree on strategy. So the general strategic direction, as advised by the experts, the invited experts, and the board and the management team, and finally self-governance. So the membership, the onboarding, offboarding, the rules for the council itself, and the board and the directors, etc., and things like compensation. So those are the five things that the council as a whole is responsible for. And so getting back to the question, the LLC itself doesn't need to be massive. It doesn't need to be, bloated and an industry in itself. It can be a very lean team which supports the operations of the committees that do the work of the council. So in terms of breaking even, which was what the question said, The LLC itself runs quite light. And there are ways, and Charles is, as president, is charged with finding ways to tighten and ensure that the LLC itself is optimal over time, and that's what he's doing. As we know, the network receives transaction fees, and that's the revenue. And so over time, we'll pass that break-even point for the entire network. Of course, the treasury itself, goes up and down in value, and so that extends and reduces the runway that we have to distribute those funds into the ecosystem partners who then onward develop the network. So it's a very long-winded answer to a very simple question, but the break-even point for the LLC itself is a kind of movable feast. But we do have years' worth of runway, and Charles has got a job to continue to optimize and tighten that operation. But as it stands at the moment, it looks like it's moving pretty well.
And the strategy is pretty much straightforward. They have to have enough use cases generating enough transactions in a given type of transaction to hit that break-even point, not just for the LLC, but any grantees of the LLC. So now Hashgraph and Swirlds and the HBAR Foundation, Hashgraph Association, and so forth. And then also have enough incentives for the nodes to run, so node incentives, and then HBAR incentives for the HBAR holders as well. So we do have to take all of that into consideration,
Absolutely.
We just have to have enough use cases and traction, right?
Well, it's utility, as we always say, right? It's utility, so that equates to use cases. It's fresh liquidity coming into the ecosystem to pay for those for that usage, and that drives everything. That's the engine room. This is Web3, so it's not as simple as a single LLC and its break even. But these are not related entities, right? So the LLC itself has its own operation, has to pay for itself, and it does that first and foremost through the revenue it gets from the network.
All right, sounds good. We'll move on to the next one, and it comes from one of our good friends. He gives us a lot of good questions, Dude Mantu, who says, in King Solomon's interview with Mance, Lehman, and Eric, interledger communication feature was mentioned, and it could be a game changer. When can we hear more?
So I'm going to go and speak to Atul, who's leading the charge on this, Eric tells me, and find out a bit more, because this isn't just a payments problem. It's actually, for all of Web3 now. And hot on the heels of things like DREC, I suspect Lehman's thoughts are turning to other things that Hedera can be as a kind of an enabler or a common good for the whole of the Web3 space. So watch this space, and I'll go and find out some more, because I'm pretty intrigued myself.
All right, we will do. So Dude Mantu has another one. His second question is, why was there no announcement for Sarah Hale as CMO? And why does management seem to be in a bunker? Abdullah had a similar one. He asked, what happened to Manson Lehman? I haven't seen them in a while. So do you have any thoughts on this?
I'm not sure that management is in a bunker. Certainly not all management. I mean, there may be one or two absent at the moment, but Manson, Lehman keep on popping up. There was this King Solomon broadcast that's referred to then. They've got their regular first principles chats. They've been very public recently about the brand name change on Swirlds Labs to Hashgraph. They're regularly seen at big events. They're talking about what Hedera is doing, what Hashgraph are doing, some big use cases. They turned up to the meetups in New York City when the governing council was in town. And I suspect they're doing lots around Texas and Austin. So I don't know that it's necessarily Manson Lehman are absent at all. They're certainly as engaged as they've ever been, I believe, through the governing council. And we don't have those town halls that we once kind of waited on with bated breath. But some of these fireside chats, the first principle ones, can fill in for that, and they're pretty accessible. So that's them. I can't talk for the foundation leadership. I'll talk for I can't talk for any of the leadership either. But I mean, Kamal is very present, and lots of announcements coming out of THA, and Paolo is never off the airwaves for the DLT Science Foundation. So that's the kind of the leadership across the ecosystem. CMO, I think there was an announcement. I'm pretty sure there was an announcement, but I would have to go and check the feeds to confirm that. But I'd be very surprising to me if Sarah Hale hadn't been formally announced. I'm pretty sure I saw that on X.
I think she has been certainly announced, but I need to reach out to her and have her on and see what her philosophy is around marketing.
Absolutely. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I will say that Manson Lehman, every time I've asked to get an interview or something like that, they've always made time. I will say I've actually been ideating and thinking about having Mance on for some hard questions. So that might be the first one that he would say no to, but I did one similar to that a while back. So I'll try to get them back on as soon as I can.
I mean, they're busy guys, of course, right? I mean, this is a growing ecosystem, and there comes a point where the same old questions, or repeating the same stuff. It's already in. It's out there. It's immutably embedded on the internet. The videos are always there to see. So I think if there's fresh announcements, if there's new directions, if there's new utility, then they're very very accessible. So yeah, I encourage you to get them on the show regularly.
There you go. All right. So the next one comes from Rooster13, who asks, Rob, do you believe that there are any other crypto tokens that HBAR can form partnerships with to offer a service that HBAR can't perform or offer alone? Are there any other crypto tokens that you follow at all?
As usual, I probably have to dissect the question a little. I'm assuming he means Hedera and HBAR with other protocols, other crypto, rather than can HBAR interact with HTS token, for example, or some kind of combined utility within the Hedera network. That's my assumption. Would that be yours too?
Yeah, my question is, of course you follow a lot of the HTS tokens and tokens that are built on Hedera, but, are there other protocols out there, like you mentioned, that you pay attention to as well, layer ones, things like that? But, one of the things that just jumped right into my mind as soon as I first saw this question is, Filecoin is certainly one of them, Chainlink,
yep.
Things along those lines, that certainly there's integrations that can be made between those tokens. But, layer ones and things like that, there's a lot of different directions we could go with this question.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's a really interesting question, isn't it? Because you can get some quite complex token structures when there's a real need to interrelate them. So as an example, I've been looking at ways of combining stablecoins with Guardian tokens. So that if you have a stablecoin which is representing kind of tiny value, so micropayments, why not have an impact token like a Guardian token attached to that? What does that look like? Which one of them has the preeminent value? What is the relationship within the utility that you're delivering that within, where that it makes sense to do that rather than just using it to buy and sell? So things like rewards platforms are very interesting as well, where in particular instances, users of those platforms may receive rewards in a different kind of value to fiat or to a fiat linked token. So there are some really interesting and more complex ways of looking at tokenization and the combination of tokens. And if you then layer on top of that some kind of interledger protocol like we were talking about before, where you can smoothly transfer tokens of value across networks, and you also have the rationale for combining these tokens into, let's say, some kind of hierarchical structure or other type of relationship, then we get to some really interesting places where these Web3 data structures, these token structures, which actually carry the value and the property right and the ownership, etc., they all kind of can be used in a particular way. But I'm not sure we're quite there yet with the technology, but it's definitely great thinking about it. And then, of course, you've got the normal interrelationships between tokens that provide liquidity between networks. So there's a relationship there. We can talk about DeFi as well. Where, there's a relationship between pairs of tokens, and you get liquidity pool tokens. So there's lots of different examples of how these things work, usually bound within smart contracts. I hope that answers the question.
I think, like we said, they could go in a lot of different
Yeah.
directions. So the next one comes from Rapunzel, and she asks if we have any updates on marketing, transparency, and communication efforts regarding retail. Uncle Bud also had another one around marketing, and he asks, is Hedera hard to market? What is our marketing team doing to make Hedera attractive, fresh, loud, or just feel great to invest in, besides karate combat? And right off the top, I'll say that I don't think that Hedera is hard to market. We have tremendous technical capabilities that we can tout. It's processing more transactions than the next, 99 networks out there. We have the governing council with these huge names. We have fantastic use cases that are being built on Hedera, and Karate Combat is a great example of that. I do think that our focus needs to shift a little bit, and I think that's why retail gets brought up a lot. I think we need to focus on kind of the lifeblood of the Hedera economy, which is HBAR and HBAR holders. It allows for more capital to come into our ecosystem, the liquidity moving in and out of our ecosystem. Of course, it's used to pay the fees on Hedera. There are a lot of reasons why focusing on the HBAR holder and what's important for them can really goose the rest of the ecosystem as well. But, those are just my thoughts generally, that if we shifted our focus just a little bit and focused on that base layer numeraire, we'd make a lot of progress. But Rob, do you have any thoughts on marketing?
Yeah, well, of course, I'm not a marketing professional, so I'm probably the last person on the planet that should be asked. But it's worth, I think, providing a governing council perspective again, because some of these things do get lost in the furore of discussion around retail marketing. The governing council, like I said earlier, is there to govern the network. It's only able to do its job if it can kind of steer clear of all of the uncertainty around regulation, and the categorization of cryptocurrencies. And that's the right thing to do. In fact, every network that is successful, every layer one network, separates the commercialization of the network, usually within a foundation, from the engineering or the building on that network. That's necessary it's deemed necessary to avoid the breaching things like the Howey test. So that separation is absolutely necessary. Now, where the grey area, I guess, in terms of regulatory uncertainty is how far can one kind of market into the other? How far can we talk about the coin or the price or all the other things? And the view that Hedera has taken is we cannot. The governing council governs the network. It's the network operator. It does not have a need, nor should not start pushing what ostensibly becomes price action on the tokens on the network. So that separation is absolute, and the clear water between the two that was set up 2.5 years ago, and separation and the spinning out of the foundation and the business teams and the commercialization aspect was specifically, and I was there at the time, spoke to the directors, and we all agreed that the number one purpose of the foundation, in addition to distribution of grants and growing the ecosystem, was that it could, without these shackles on, start shouting about Hedera from the rooftops, and that included, in our view, we're playing catch up on DeFi, we're playing catch up on NFTs, and also the marketing. And so those things, and DeFi and NFTs have been very, very well addressed by the foundation. So I applaud everything that's gone before. The marketing is something which, for whatever reason, hasn't really ever fully kicked into its stride from a retail perspective. Governing council perspective, we've got Marcom, we've got a very clear direction from the Governing Council that we focus on enterprise marketing. We have, the marketing committee has very clear objectives, and these objectives are to increase network adoption, to grow the number of enterprises interested in Hedera, and grow and engage the developer ecosystem. So those are the three core objectives of the marketing committee. Notice that the word enterprises, or grow the number of enterprises interested in Hedera, because it remains the strategic thinking that over time, the growth of the network is going to be driven by large scaled use cases, which will be kind of enterprise, either, old school enterprise, or the next generation of enterprise, which may or may not be decentralized. So all of that is to say, we have very different perspectives. Governing Council cannot get involved in the retail side. The conundrum here, of course, and this grey area, this clear water in between, is that we need retail. The whole network needs retail. You can't blink yourself. It's not, black and white. It's not as binary as that. The retail pays the bills meme is it resonates because retail is part of this equation and absolutely has to be there. And it won't grow organically. It won't be sustained organically without finding a way to feed and fuel it. So there is a conundrum. It's not something Governing Council can influence, but we expect and hope that the ecosystem partners are able to do that and start ramping it up.
Well, a fantastic new development is here in the United States. It seems like we're moving in the direction of regulatory clarity. There's, presidential candidates who are talking favorably, on both sides. It seems like that there's some really good progress that's being made there that would make a layer one like Hedera pretty safe, as long as, they are being prudent with how they're talking about the things. It's also become clear to me that funding a decentralized network like this is going to be possible utilizing retail, as long as you stay within those guardrails. And I think that the one thing that we want to do is, if we are utilizing that capital, that we are keeping those people that are providing that capital, make sure that they're top on our list, to make sure that the regulations do go in the right direction when they do actually come to fruition. All right, so the last question I have.
Let's hope so. And just to finish off there, it's we can't wait. I mean, the time is now. We can't risk the ecosystem itself, just dissipating and not putting all of its energy and focus into building on this amazing technology that we have, this gift that we have to build on top of. So as a builder myself, I really feel it's on me to go out. I've got a meet up in Sydney this evening at the Australian DeFi Alliance. Our very great friends there who built the CBDC project and run this. And I'm going to provide a Hedera update. So every time I step out into the community, which I do a lot, and talk about Hedera, which I do incessantly, I want to engage with people who have heard about Hedera and who hold HBAR and hold tokens and love an aspect or many aspects of what's being built in Hedera, whether it's Karate Combat that's been heard about, or Earthlings, or they love the unique capabilities of Centex, or they love the speed of Source of Swap, or the DeFi aspect. So, or just want to find out more about real world asset tokenization, or what we're doing with stable coins, or or everything. And I want that energy to be in that conversation, and that can only be really if there's a consistent marketing message which engages with that part of the community.
Well, I will say that because of those positive developments, I think we are going to be able to be a little bit more aggressive moving forward and put some more resources
Yeah, I
toward
hope
it.
so.
All right, so the last one's going to be a fun one here, Rob. It comes again from Rapunzel, who asks, Rob, have you been trying any new Italian food? So, of course, this is going back to where you were spending some time recently. So, what was your favorite dish?
um, I love everything about Italy. I'm a massive Italophile. I've had a house there for nearly 20 years. My wife's Italian. So I wouldn't be able to put my finger on a single dish other than my mother-in-law's lasagna, which is exquisite. She comes from Naples and they put egg in their lasagna, which is quite incredible. Um, Boiled eggs. Uh, I I have a very favorite pizzeria near the house our house that we stay in Italy. The Papa Four pizza is pretty special as well. Our neighbors do an incredible brassato, which is kind of a meat that's been slow cooked in its juices over a very long time. It's sliced and cooked in its juices. So brassato is probably my favorite dish that I've come back this time with. And of course, the gelato is to die for. So I'm probably carrying a few extra pounds after that last few weeks, but it was all earned.
That's what time away from home is for, to try all the new things out there. Rob, that's all we have for this week. We really appreciate you coming on again and answering these community questions. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, Brandon, and see you next week. Cheers.
All right. So if you have any questions for Rob, drop those down in the comments and we'll try to get to them as soon as we can. So while I was on vacation, we watched Karate Combat, of course. And I did that with my sister's family. And I did a new kind of gift for them. I got them each a 500,000 karate. And I made sure before the snapshot, I got them into their wallets. I went through and helped them pick out their fighters and all that kind of fun stuff. And then we watched the fights together. And just like I thought, that little bit of extra skin in the game with Up Only Gaming takes that sporting event to an entirely new level. And watching it with others makes it that much more fun. And I have to give a huge shout out. The event was amazing. The fights were amazing. A specific shout out to Owen Chelmia. He's going to be going for that belt next. But we caught up with Only LARPing. He is one of the founders of Karate Combat and kind of the mastermind behind Up Only Gaming to give us some more information around what they've done with these recent events and some of the new things that are coming out around their application. Dave, welcome back and congratulations on what has been a really impressive string of Karate Combat events lately.
Thanks, man. It's always a pleasure to be here.
All right, so to kick this off, let's talk about some of those events. It seems like during these past few events, Karate Combat is reaching a new level of exposure and awareness. What do you attribute that success to?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, I mean, we've definitely thrown together some really amazing events in a row. So that helps. I guess probably going back to Dubai in April, followed up by Consensus in May, that really viral event we had down in Orlando, and then this last one in Nashville. It felt like, each one kept getting better, more and more buzz. And so it's hard to pinpoint exactly why, but it feels like we, hit an inflection point at some point over this year, and it feels good.
So, since you have that Web3 aspect of Karate Combat and you're able to do these alongside events like Consensus and BTC Nashville just this past week, do you think that has something to do with it?
I do. I do. It's a really unique opportunity, and it sort of fell in our lap. We had, most of the big crypto conferences in the world reach out to us at the beginning of this year. We bet the entire league on Web3, and for us, it's easier to sell sponsorships at these events. Frankly, it's even easier to fill the stadium at these events. You got this built-in audience that knows about us, even though we're traveling all over the world, right? We can fly into this city we've never been to. We did zero marketing locally, and we could still fill a stadium. So yeah, I think it's helping a lot. I think the Web3 audience is super passionate about Karate Combat, and it's definitely attributing to our success in big and in surprising ways that you wouldn't even think about.
Well, I wasn't able to make it to this past event, but I know we put on that Built on Hedera booth.
Yeah.
How did that go?
That was a blast, man. We got to keep doing that, in my opinion. Yeah, so we had a bunch of Hedera projects, set up a really nicely done interactive installation at the end of the VIP walkway. So we had this really long, beautiful sort of VIP walkway back to the VIP entrance and bar. And the Built on Hedera booth was right at the end of that. And so they got to interact with, I don't know, probably 1,000 to 1,500 VIPs over the course of the evening, including tons of celebrities and huge Web3 influencers. It seemed like they were having fun with it.
So now let's get into your app a little bit. Can you tell us about some of the
Yeah.
new features and new ways you've been using your app here in recent months?
Sure. So thinking about like how we've iterated the app over the last few months, probably the biggest feature that we added that's most recognizable, built an affiliate program off of vote delegation. So if you talk to similar products in the kind of digital sports interactive space, a lot of them have grown off of affiliate programs. We couldn't build a traditional affiliate program on Up Only Gaming because it's a free product. So you can't really pay someone for bringing a new user. So instead, we built this really cool twist on an affiliate program off of vote delegation. I'd say it's only sort of half built right now. The other half is going to require us to transition to staking. But the way it works is any user can delegate their picks to any other user. And so ideally, people with audience, super fans, KOLs are going out there and saying, hey, delegate your votes to me. I'll make your picks for you in return for a small portion of the upside. And so that's got a decent amount of buzz. But yeah, I have to take a look at the app to see what else we've been building in there over the last few months. I get kind of lost thinking about what our future plans are.
What about, how you're using the new DAO features, how you're using voting and voting on different things recently?
Oh yeah, well that's what happens when you build like a software product. You're like, oh hey, I can actually use this feature for something else. So at Consensus, we ran a Fight of the Night bonus that Kraken sponsored. They wanted to do a $10,000 prize to the IFC Fight of the Night. We ran that. May from Hashback actually won that prize. We tried something similar on our own in this event. It was a knockout, so it was sort of obvious like who the prize was going to be to. But had it been a split decision, it might have been a little bit more interesting. A 5 million karate token bonus to the kind of fans decide winner of the last fight of the evening. And so, yeah, I think you can use the voting feature in a ton of different interactive ways. We're a little bit hamstrung currently on our current setup for really creating like interactive pieces of Up Only Gaming during the event. So in advance of staking coming out, we're testing some other ways to get people to use the app during the event.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. So you mentioned some of those new features. Can you give us some insights along those lines?
Yeah, of course. So we've been talking a lot about this, I think. Right now, the way the product works is it runs off of like Snapshot. So for 48 hours before each event, token holders can vote on which fighters they think are going to win. However, that voting cuts off a half an hour before the event starts. And of course, it starts 48 hours before the event. What that means is we can't market the app effectively right when a fight is announced. And then most importantly, we can't market the app during the most important period of time, which is actually during the event. So ideally, during the event, you're hammering the audience, hey, go download the app now so you can vote on this next fight and earn more tokens. We have a plan and we're executing on transitioning from sort of unlock snapshot model to more of a like locked up staking model where to play you need to have your tokens staked and you can come in at any time, buy tokens, stake them to play. That'll allow people to like buy tokens during the event and play immediately.
Well, let's get into those tokens a little bit more and speak to those token holders. How are you thinking about Up-Only Gaming in terms of sustainability? We know that you had a fair amount of runway already built in, but how do we make that go on for years to come?
I mean, I think the most important thing to look at is like just think about it right now, right? So like the prize pool on this last event was 150 million tokens. The total supply of the karate token is 110 billion tokens. So actually, when you run the numbers, it's like it's not material in a way, in my opinion. Like you could do that forever. That being said, there's a few different ways where you could transition away from new issuance for sponsored kind of up-only gaming events, and then some other things that unfortunately I can't talk about. But I think if you just look at the core numbers today, the people who are concerned about like issuance for up-only gaming like just aren't looking at the underlying numbers.
That makes a lot of sense. And the things that you were saying, I think that's exactly what token holders want to hear. So, is there anything else you'd like to pass on before we let you go?
Well, we've got a huge event coming up in Singapore in about 6 weeks. Arguably could be the biggest event of the year. We'll see. Token 2049 is easily the biggest crypto conference in Asia, arguably the biggest crypto conference in the world. The conference is on September 18th and 19th, Wednesday and Thursday night, in Marina Bay Sands in Singapore. We will be inside the conference venue on Wednesday night, right between the 2 days of the conference, building a 3,000 person stadium. And we've got a huge IFC card because when we were talking to these Web3 influencers that approached us about fighting, everybody wanted to fight in Singapore. So we got Mario Nafal fighting, Jakey Soul fighting, Ashley DeCan fighting, Blonde Broker fighting, a bunch of others. It's going to be pretty hyped.
Well, I can't wait for that one. Dave, again, congratulations on all the success you've had, and thank you so much for coming on today and telling us about it.
My pleasure, man.
So when I think of Karate Combat, I automatically just put it in the sports bucket. I don't think of it as one of the Hedera gaming ecosystem games, but is it a game? Of course it's a game, and it's making it to the top of the list or towards the top of the list on playtoearn.com. But there's another game that just launched on Hedera that comes from the Tierbot team, and they're pretty passionate about it. It's a completely new kind of game. I caught up with one of the co-founders, Michael, who has some really cool insights around what they're doing. So let's check that out. Michael, welcome back.
Thanks, Brandon. Appreciate you having us on your show.
Of course, anytime. So you've brought a completely new kind of game to the Hedera ecosystem. But before we get into what makes this game different, I want to get into some of the gameplay. Why did you choose to base Snake Dash off the Nokia game that some of us older HBARbarians remember?
Yeah, so really, it comes down to like a philosophy thing for me, right? I appreciate high fidelity games with crazy graphics and all those niceties that we have in modern gaming today. But at the same time, I've always felt that it's a little bit backwards, right? And I really feel like what we should kind of focus on when it comes to Web3 gaming is nailing down something that's fun, addicting, and implements things like tokenomics in a novel way. I've said this at a panel before, and I think it was actually a gaming panel. I think it upset some people, and I said, I don't think that the first game that has 1 billion plus users, or even like 10 million, 20 million users, is going to be one of those Unreal Engine high fidelity games. I think literally it's going to be something like Flappy Bird. It's going to be something like Candy Crush. The graphics aren't going to be great. Actually, they're probably going to be terrible, but they're going to be really fun, and it's going to be so fun that you're going to be going on your commute to train. I'm from New York, so we take the train here to get places, and you're going to see your mom or somebody else that an older cousin. They're going to be on their phone. They're going to be playing this game because it's easy and it's accessible. So that was kind of part one of the thought process. Part two is actually some inspiration from a tweet that Pluto from Hashpack made. He said, it'd be cool if there was Slither on Hedera as like a playable game. And the data created Snake Dash. I was actually supposed to be doing something completely different, but I was getting really frustrated in what I was working on. I was like, you know what? I have this idea, and it's sitting in the back of my mind because of, what Pluto said, and, let me just try it. And I made this game in 3 hours, literally just 3 hours. It's super, super simple, and that's the benefit of making a simple game, is that any indie game developer can do something like this. And I'm not an indie game developer. I really, my trade and craft is in fintech and SaaS and big, web-based products. I don't make games, but I was able to make this one in 3 hours of just messing around with JavaScript, CSS, and HTML. And that's kind of like the beauty of making a game like this, is that you don't need $1 million, $10 million, $20, $30 million budget to make it. Anyone can make a game like this. And I think that's the best part about it, is that accessibility. I also, partly think we're burning a lot of money trying to make these high fidelity games, when we could be doing something like this at first. Let's nail down the tokenomics, let's nail down the fun part and the addicting part, and then move on and, get grander and bigger. If you look at the gaming industry, that's how it started. It did not start with these high fidelity games.
I think you're hitting the nail on the head. Actually, one of the most popular games we've had so far in the Hedera ecosystem, Slime World, is that kind of easy, fun, addictive game. And I know I was addicted to Slither back in the day off the Nokia phone as well. So, is there any twists though to your version compared to that older version?
A little bit. So with what we did with Snake Dash is, well, number one is it's inscribed completely on the hash graph as hashnal. That was one of the key points to it. I can actually share my screen and pull this up right now. So it is inscribed completely on the hash graph. So that's one kind of gotcha. The other gotcha is in our version of the snake game, we have a snake that's actually eating ants. And you've got 3 difficulty levels. And when you're going around with these higher difficulty levels, there's actually dynamite on the screen. And the higher difficulty level, the more dynamite actually comes up on the screen. So this is easy mode right now. And you can see there's a little bit of dynamite on the screen right now. It's kind of pretty easy to play. You have your keys on the keyboard that you use to navigate, so it's not that complicated. Of the game. Now let's say I've just lost 40 points and I want to click restart, and then I want to go and play on a higher difficulty. So let's say I go on hard. There we go. So there's a lot more dynamite on the screen, as you can see. The little red squares with the yellow in the middle, that's dynamite. And you can see how hard it kind of gets as you play.
Sure. Very cool. So you mentioned there, when we talk about these games that are completely on graph or completely on chain, what does that mean? And what are the benefits of a game like that?
Yeah. So what it actually means today is that the entirety of the game is stored on the Hedera consensus service, which in this case, it means the HTML file that's loading in the tierbot CDN. It means the JavaScript that actually runs and executes the game engine. And it means the CSS that renders and paints it so that it looks interesting and nice. So all of that is combined and inlined in a single file today as a hashnal. And that's kind of what it means. And in terms of the benefits, I think the largest benefit for me that I see with this is you have this game that works as a hashnal that's powered through the tierbot CDN, which you can't see in the screen share, but the actual link for this game is like tier.bot/API/inscription CDN, and then the topic ID for the game. Because of that, you can inscribe your HTML-based game and send it literally to millions of people within minutes of inscribing the game. You don't need to create an app in the App Store. You don't need to run your own servers to render the game. You don't even need a website. You can just create your game as HTML, inscribe it, and then you can start sending it to people. So where this kind of gets really fun is, with this particular game, we added, it's not just that you can play the game, but you can also mint this game as a hashnal. But more importantly, you can submit a score. So when I go and I click submit score, today it takes you to this tierbot page where you can go and put your score on a leaderboard. But there's no reason why, with a little bit more effort, we couldn't have put this all inside of that same HTML hashnal. So you go to this page, you can take a screenshot of your score, you can even inscribe it if you want the proof to be more solid. And then you click submit, and it actually writes your score to another topic ID on the Hedera consensus service. So now you've got this decentralized game that's running on the Hedera consensus service, and it's rendering all online all the JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. And you've got a leaderboard too that is also decentralized, where anyone can go and submit a score to that leaderboard. As an indie game creator, that's really powerful, because let's say you go and make a game like this, and you're trying to make it as frictionless as possible. You don't want the user to have to like go and create a wallet or do any of that stuff. That's fine. You could totally do that because you have your game inscribed. You can create a TikTok ad and say, hey, here's this new game that just came out. It's so fun and addicting. And then you can say, hey, we're giving out like $200 or whatever to the person who gets the highest score on this game. So through your ad, you take them to the game, they play it, and if they want a chance to go and win that $200, at that point, then you could go and prompt them to go make a wallet, because now they've got that incentive. You're not asking them to create a wallet for no reason in advance of the game. You get them to do that once they're incentivized, like, okay, I'm good at this game. I think I can actually win this prize, and then go and make a wallet and put a little bit of HBAR in so that I can submit to the topic ID. Or if you want to improve the user experience even more, you can maybe give them a little bit of HBAR, because the cost to submit to a topic ID is like 0.0001 cents, right? It wouldn't be that much to go and airdrop these users that HBAR for free so that they can go and submit to the leaderboard. But with those kinds of experiences, it opens up the door to all of these indie game developers who I think previously didn't really have that outlet to build a Web3 game, and now they can. They can get users by creating these games, offering incentives for winning prizes, and they can use that as, I think, a stepping stone, at the very least, to create engagement for their own ecosystem, build a following of some sort. And, once you've done that, go and eventually get somebody to actually pay for this game that you're creating.
I think is a really good strategy. So, Michael, what are the first steps that somebody would need to take to get involved with something like this?
Yeah. So when it comes to inscribing, anybody can go and do it. I'll actually go and show you the inscription portal. So on my end, what I didn't mention earlier is that this hashinal is a dynamic hashinal, which means that you can actually change the versions of it at any time and have it update and load in different dApps when you've got that new version available. One of the benefits of dynamic hashinals versus regular hashinals is that it actually keeps historic versions. And this is a flavor of dynamic NFTs that I don't think has been done anywhere, like in any blockchain that I've heard of personally, where every time you go and update your metadata, let's say you start with version 1, you can make a new version of your game, and that's your version 2, and then you can have a version 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever. The latest sequence number will always be your current version. But a dApp could go and say, oh, these are all the different versions of your game, and then you can kind of display that inside of the dApp. So let's say somebody wants to play a previous version of it, they can go and do that. So as an indie game developer, I think that is kind of really powerful, having that flexibility. Or if you're thinking about it from the actual in-game assets perspective, and you give somebody a character that they level up in the game, and then you store those changes. As a game developer, you can go and at any time, basically in real time, update the metadata. And let's say you're battling a snake or whatever, and you get some experience points, and you want to reflect that in metadata, so you can go and inscribe in real time. And it's super duper cheap because it's the Hedera consensus service, and you're just updating the JSON metadata, most likely. So historically, you'd be able to show over a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks that the experience points or health, whatever, had gone up in time, and a dApp can go and display that. And then in the secondary market, if you're a buyer, you might be more interested in buying a character that has leveled up quite quickly, because you might relate that to that character was built up by a professional gamer or somebody who's really good at this, so it feels more valuable to me. So through the versioning system, you get all kinds of flexibility. Anyway, that was a little bit of a tangent. But as a user, you can go and inscribe all of this content, these games, through the Tierbot inscription portal. This is a live view of the Snake Dash inscription, which I had done from my account. And you can see down here, this is the version that I was talking about. So this is actually version 7. And inside the game, you have a image that kind of shows up in your wallet. So this is the Snake Dash image. hashnal trail. And then inside of that, you also have the HTML file, which is the playable game asset. So you would just copy this topic ID and you would send it to your users so that they can go and play the game. So the whole process, actually inscribing the game, is really, really easy as well. So I'm going to switch my share screen over here. So this is the homepage of the Terabyte inscription portal. And within the inscription portal, you have two kind of options of what kind of NFT you're going to inscribe. So you can inscribe a immutable hashnal or a dynamic hashnal. Maybe for your game you don't want it to change, so you can make it immutable. I think in most cases with games you might want to just do a dynamic hashnal, just so you have that flexibility of changing over time. Then you would drop in like your primary image over here that would reflect your game in some capacity, and you could come down here and actually generate the metadata for your game. So I would call it some game and some description over here, and then I can put the attributes. So I would say version 1, I'd say it's version 1. And then I can also include secondary files. So inside of the Terabyte inscription portal, it should really feel really intuitive, kind of like Dropbox. That's what we're going for. So if you've inscribed things before, you can just select from your previous inscriptions and then you can find them here. I can see the HTML file is here, and then I would just pop it in and I can see that it's loaded. That's my preview. And then I could just call it HTML game. And I put in a description, I hit save JSON, and then I go ahead and I click begin inscription process. That whole thing for a user should probably cost, I don't know if it's a basic HTML game like Snake Dash, 3 HBAR at most, to go and create a game that you can go and send to millions of people. And then it'll cost about the same much every time you go and update the game. So as a game developer, it's extremely cheap, affordable, and fast. If we were talking about doing the same thing on like Bitcoin, even uploading a megabyte of data on Bitcoin would cost you a couple $1,000s. But on Hedera, you're talking about creating a game for like less than 50 cents. It's just kind of incredible if you think about how that works.
Well, Michael, I love this concept. I hope you build some new features into it as well. I can't wait to see what other people do building on this same concept. Thank you so much for coming on today and explaining it, and good luck.
Thank you so much, Brandon.
So it sounds like Michael is just chomping at the bit to get with other indie game developers and take this idea of on-graph games to the next level with people that make these casual games for a living. So if there are any game developers out there that might want to explore integrating this kind of on-graph technology, definitely get with Tierbot and they'll be more than happy to help. And before we move on from Hedera Gaming, Alex Russman, who is the head of consumer engagement at the HBAR Foundation, he was on The Tie talking specifically about Hedera Gaming. So we had some highlights from that, not just from Alex, but also from Tony, who is the co-founder of Reality Plus, talking about their Doctor Who Worlds Apart game. So we'll take a look at a couple of those highlights as well.
But what we've done a great job of building over the last few years through HBAR Market as well is an ecosystem of your B2B or B2B2C partners. And the idea here is to have partners who can't just deliver Hedera tech, but also the design and knowledge to make brands actually have a working business around this kind of innovative Web3 technology. So we've had multiple partners building now for a long time, building solutions, pitching them to brands, building brand pipelines, iterating on those solutions. And so the coming quarter, we're excited to see those actually scaling up. In terms of names to look into, if you're interested in celebrities, we have fan engagement platforms like Galaxy and also Zoop, where the founder there, RJ, was part of the founding team of OnlyFans. In the fashion space, we saw one of our partners, Miu, launch with their first kind of luxury fashion partner at Milan Design Week, Baxter ID, and they'll be going into the fashion branded space very, very shortly with first use case and projects there. But again, behind these go lives are very strong brand pipelines. I think one of the things we've been talking more about on Twitter spaces and pieces with these partners is it takes a long time, actually not so long maybe to build a solution, but a long time to build those relationships with brands and understand what needs to be delivered. Another partner you'll be hearing more from is Baltic, a very exciting fashion project. Then in the sports space, your Web3 community will be very familiar with Karate Combat. If you're a cycling fan, definitely check out Road Code, a platform with 150,000 users playing a fantasy game, seeing live data and a whole new ranking system for the cycling industry. Locker Room, a partner, has just launched a US cricket platform. Momental is launching another US sports league platform. Very, very cool. And in the gaming space, Tony is going to speak more about what Reality Plus is doing there. We also have Michael Mumbauer, the ex-head of PlayStation Studio, with a company called Lithos. I don't want to be just spraying out too many names there, but I definitely recommend looking at the Hedera ecosystem pages and upcoming announcements. A lot of really great partners working with some really, really cool brands.
Reality Plus, as I mentioned, is a games company. So my number one job is to make great games. That's all we want to do is to go out there and it's great game, great game, great game. That's how you get millions of players. But we are absolute fans and believers in Web3. So I'm also a big fan of bringing and working with big brands and IP. So in previous companies, I've worked with movie brands from Paramount, Universal, Fox. And the reason I like working with those is because it immediately brings me millions of followers, millions of fans that love that IP. And so early on, we were looking at what the most popular games were in blockchain. And it was trading card games. It's Gods Unchained. And the fact that you could own cards and trade them, that gaming concept just makes sense in blockchain games. So we were looking at that particular vertical, but going out there and finding us a brand that could automatically bring us a very big fan base. And also in the trading card game, a brand that could give us a lot of trading cards, a lot of characters, a lot of elements that could fill up the packs of cards. And one of those was Doctor Who. And the great thing about Doctor Who, it's owned by the BBC, and the BBC are just around the corner from us in London. So we knocked on their door, and this was 3 years ago now. And we went in there and we presented the idea of licensing or wanting to license Doctor Who to make a blockchain trading card game. And although people have a perception of the BBC as being quite old and boring, actually they're not. They're very forward thinking. In fact, they were the first to bring out the iPlayer, right? And the streaming platform. The issues around going in and presenting blockchain and NFTs, 3 years ago, was that it was so new. It took a lot of education. And in fact, it took nearly a year to get that license. Many meetings, many assumptions. What's an NFT? What's a blockchain? How does it work? Where's the monetization part? But eventually we got it, and we started to build a Doctor Who trading card game, similar, I suppose, at the time to Magic the Gathering or Hearthstone or Gods Unchained in terms of the Web3 element. However, I really wanted it to be a mobile game because I'm from the mobile industry, and I know that if you get a game that is engaging and fun on mobile, you can very easily get millions and millions of daily active users. And when you compare Web3 now to what the potential could be from Web2, I think Pixels now, I think that's a really popular Web3 game, has about 300,000 daily active users. Or when you compare that to something like, Monopoly Go, that has 4 million daily active users. The comparisons right now in numbers are black and white. So we started to create a mobile game, and we now have a very fun, very quick Marvel Snap style Doctor Who game, which has the potential to have millions of players. And you can play this from the App Store without even knowing about the NFT part. So we've come at this from Web2 first, mass market, get the players in, and then we slowly introduce them to Web3. We go, these cards that you just bought and you've crafted and you've earned in the game, well, if you go across to the website, you can connect the two accounts, and the cards will come across, and we will mint them as NFTs on the Hedera blockchain, and you can trade them within our marketplace. So we don't mention the word NFT, we don't mention the word blockchain. We talk about digital collectibles that you own, and we market this at the mass market Web2 mobile gamer, which can potentially bring us millions of players because of the brand and the platform it's on. slowly introduce them to Web3. So it's not, we're not shouting NFTs, we're not throwing it down your throat from the beginning. And I think that approach is the right approach right now. I've seen lots of great Web3 games, but it's a difficult market. It's a small market to get into. Well, we want to flip it on its side and go mass market and then introduce you to this seamlessly, frictionless. And the great thing about Hedera, there's no wallets to download. It's all built into our blockchain platform.
All right, so without further delay, we'll go ahead and finish up the rest of network analysis. I mentioned that time to consensus finality was at 3.2 seconds, and it actually edged up to about 3.4 seconds. And we created just under 60 million accounts this week. Taking a look at our fungible tokens, Wrapped HBAR takes the top spot, followed by Karate and Dovu. Next up, we have Saucer Swap's Sauce, Native USDC, Energy Trade Token, and something called International Student Identity Verifiable Credential by Malaysia Global Services. Certainly interesting, and we'll need to follow up on the details. The top 10 is rounded out by XXX and Bridged USDC. Looking at our NFTs, we have a new one in the top spot, and it also has to do with that credential from Malaysia Global Services. So this is really something we need to dig into. Next up, we have the Blade Wallet Loyalty Card, the Saucer Swap Liquidity Provider Token, the 2024 Road Code Access Card, Doctor Who Worlds Apart, and Pixel Drops. We also have a couple Karateka NFTs still floating around, as well as Not a Slime Worlds NFT, and finally Lazy Superheroes version 2. Moving on to Hedera DeFi, the total value locked in the Hedera ecosystem is about $57 million. Saucer Swap holds $53 million of that, $2.7 million on HSuite, and $1.5 million on HeliSwap. And now on to the crypto and HBAR markets. All risk assets, including stocks and crypto, are getting hit hard, as the latest economic data indicates the Fed may have waited too long on those rate cuts, and we may be headed for a hard landing. So now we're in a bad news is bad news scenario once again. This can easily become cascading and is a time to have some powder dry and ready, but I'll be keeping most of mine dry until the leaves start to change this fall. Bitcoin is down 1% on the day and over 7% on the week. HBAR is down 2% on the day and over 12% on the week to about 6 cents, an area of support, but if this downdraft in crypto continues, it won't hold, and I'm not going to worry about resistance this week. So what the heck is the silver lining of a lower HBAR price? So from what I've heard, there's a lot of focus on attracting VC and putting in place things that HBAR has been lacking, that they really need to invest. I expect this to happen in the months to come, and a lower HBAR price with the potential of this ecosystem is a great combination to get those investors involved. It might just be that fresh start we need as we enter what we hope is going to be a bull run next year. That's all we have for this week. I do want to say that while we were recording, we saw another dip in transaction volume. I'm sure that's going to be back up before too long. Next week, I am trying to line up an interview with a team that is bringing together the ESG and carbon markets together with stablecoins. It's not two worlds that I would think would go together, but it's going to be interesting to hear how they're actually doing that. I'm also going to have a space next week on casual gaming. So we're going to get the Not a Slime World team on. That's already confirmed. We're going to get Tierbot, who of course is responsible for that Snake Dash game. And I'm going to try to get a few other teams that are working on those casual games that we know can go really viral. In addition, sticking with the gaming space, I recorded a while back with Reality Plus. We heard from Tony today, and he gave a great explanation of that Doctor Who Worlds Apart game. So I want to get that posted under the Hedera Builders series that I've been putting out. So you can check out all of those interviews that I do, including this one that I'm going to be posting from Tony. Of course, we're also going to get Rob back for Shark Bites. So if you have any questions for him, make sure to drop those down below. That's all we have. We'll see you next week.